everybody. Welcome to the Healing and Freedom Journey with Mark and Melissa DeJesus. Here in a little bit of a different format, we are going to have some conversations around topics that can be an encouragement to your healing and freedom journey. Today, what we're going to get into is the subject of mental health. And do you talk about mental health too much, or do you discuss it too little? When it comes to emotions, mental health, or relationships, feelings, and stuff like that, where do you find yourself in? Today we're going to kind of talk about the different edges of the road that people can get into, and maybe some balanced perspectives that you can discover. So we pray that you enjoy this episode.
So a couple weeks ago, I was talking to you, and I brought up something that I noticed in the news media. And I think it's interesting to talk about this because there are times where I go, okay, are we doing this? Should we not do this too much? And it's the issue of, do we talk too much about mental health, our problems, emotions? So in watching this, I was seeing how some people in other countries or other cultures, and how they maybe don't like how people talk about things. And it struck me in hearing their analysis of maybe even how Americans overtalk things.
Right.
Right? So I brought this to you because I even heard another social media influencer. They were analyzing somebody and they brought out the issue of they tell too much on social media or they share too much and it made them look unstable. So I said, okay, I think we need to talk about this. And I think that you do a good job of this too. I want to touch on it as we have this conversation of even how you address it when you do your lives and you take questions and you're interacting with everybody's emotions.
Yeah.
So you and I had a big conversation about this, and I thought, okay, I think this will be a good topic to talk about because sometimes we don't know, right?
It is a good topic because it doesn't have the perfect formula. It's not like this is the perfect way you should share about your mental health, your emotional health, or emotions or feelings. Mm-hmm. But we do tend to, in culture, see the extremes, and people get to edges of the extreme opinions about it. And you're right, there is worldwide, there are many countries that, like in Europe or England, that could be have the stiff upper lip.
Yes.
Kind of concept, which when I read about mental health historically, because sometimes I wonder with mental health, is it increasing, or are we just more aware of it? And I think it's both, right? I think there is mental health problems increasing, and there is greater awareness than ever before. Whereas I read historically, like in England, and they, it wasn't called depression, it was melancholy.
Right. Right.
And it wasn't.
You just wanted to do an accent.
That's it. I just wanted to do the accent.
Those of you that love when Mark does accents.
I just wanted to do the accent. Mm-hmm. It was. There were other words. What was the other word that they would use for hysteria?
Right.
And it was attributed to women.
Right. She's being hysterical.
She's being hysterical.
Right.
And it wasn't actually acknowledging. So they'd be like, well, did you see Johnny? I don't know, I haven't seen him, and then what happened to him? Oh my goodness. And you see when we talk about depression, suicide rates, all that, a lot of those battles were hidden. You kept it hidden. You don't talk about it because if you were depressed, sad, struggling, low mood, anxious, you hid it as much as possible, because if you shared it, it revealed you're very messed up, you're very flawed. So now fast forward to today, there's more awareness of we're not dealing with our emotions. And then many people are expressing them in what I would consider to be an unsafe, unhealthy way. They're just venting, or they're sharing with strangers what they're feeling, right? And I go, this isn't the best thing for you.
Right.
Right? But then, like you were saying, and I think you were having a discussion with a friend of yours that...
Yeah, I'll share that, yeah.
Yeah. About the cultural differences that, Americans maybe are displaying, when it does come to it, we're displaying it too much at times. does that then ruin it for the rest of us that are like, we're really trying to navigate stuff?
Okay, that's a great question. Right, right. Okay, that's a really good question. Yeah, so I have a friend who's from the UK, and after thinking about this, I said, you know what, I want to ask her about it and just her opinion, because now she's been in the States, and what's the difference? So we had a really great conversation about it. So if you're watching, thank you, because it helped me even in understanding the cultural differences. Because the stuff that I was watching in the news media, I like to go watch what other countries, what they say about the U.S. and things like that. And it was an interesting thing for me to watch how they were discussing this one topic, almost with an anger that how dare someone would even talk about family stuff, like that it was so not regal and what's the other word? Like you just don't do that. You do not talk about family things. You don't talk about emotions. You don't talk about that stuff. So I asked her, I'm like, okay, I'm noticing this. And she said, yeah, in living in the States, then talking to friends in the UK, it was, oh, you're so American with how now she discusses things, but how much she appreciates that we do talk about things here, because so much is hidden, put under the cart. Not that. Listen, a lot of families here like to sweep stuff under the rug.
Yeah.
But I wonder too if it does go back historically to when families had shame or things that came upon the family in not discussing them and hiding them, then emotional things got hidden.
Right.
If we're not going to talk about this, we're not going to talk about Dad's depression. We're not going to talk. It was the shameful things got hidden, and then more just it kind of steamrolled.
Right. In recovery groups, the term, I may not be saying it right, it was don't talk, don't feel, don't, I forget what it is. There's three words, but it was a culture of hiddenness.
Right.
And so then now we're trying to shift out of that, and many people are struggling to just get out of that. And then we see people that go the other extreme, where are like, what does it look like to live healthy?
Right.
So,
now, when you and I were talking about this, I think you brought up something that I feel is a really good example, because we had this issue when we were pastoring that we didn't really realize at first. And I would love for you to bring that out for people because we tried to be a church that was, everybody says that, oh, I want a healthy church. I want people to be themselves.
Right.
Okay, so everybody, sometimes I have an eye roll when I hear people say that. No, my church wants to be healthy. I'm like, yeah, they all do.
Right.
Or, no, I shouldn't say that. But there's intention to. But when that plays out, it can be messy.
Really messy. And I can understand why churches kind of opt for the control, keep things in a box kind of control. I understand, because it is when you allow emotional expression, working through things. What I realized over years is we get very frustrated with our ministry work, even in church, because we're like, come on, we want to deal with stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we would have very powerful church meetings.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'd share the story to other people, they go, man, I want to go there. I want to go where you're at. And I'm like, yeah, yes and no, because there were moments where we would, I'd call people up, There were times where I just felt a stirring or an unction, if you want, use the spiritual word, an unction. And I would call somebody out and I'd prophesy over them. And I was like, where is this coming from? But just faith was stirring in me over people, because I feel very deeply. And so if I'm in a church setting, I feel a lot of what's going on, and that's been tough to navigate. It's I just want to sit and listen to something and so I'd act out of that, and I would share what I felt God was saying, and there'd be a witness, and it was like, wow. And the person would start bawling. Right. It wasn't incredibly, it wasn't like vulnerable things where I was like, you've been doing, it wasn't those kind of things, but it was vulnerable in the sense of speaking over their life and their, and just the healing of their heart. And it was very emotional. And I had this problem in our church where when that would happen, then the person wouldn't come back. Well, so I would have great moments, and then I wouldn't see him again. And it was, even if you followed up or whatever. So we constantly felt like we had what they would call in elementary school the cooties, which is like, ooh, girls have cooties, this kind of like avoidancing. I was like, do I have cooties or something like that?
Well, the thing that is a piece of that too is that after service, people were gushing on how like let's say the person that you did call out and prophesied over, they were so touched and so overwhelmed, and were like, oh, cool, that's awesome. Not that you do that stuff to get people to come back. That's not what we're saying. But we're thinking, oh, that resonated with them. Cool. And then either you don't see them again or they come one or two times.
Yeah.
Now there's two problems that can happen from that, is that people get overwhelmed and they're like, okay, whoa, this is too much for me. Or the second or third or fourth time, whatever they come, they don't feel that again. And they want that again.
Good point.
So I think that's another piece.
Right.
Yeah,
and I didn't realize that
that's a big problem, actually.
That we were too much for people.
Right.
Until one day I was talking to a pastor and I'm like, kind of reaching out for help. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I shared and he gave me that feedback. He's like, emotionally, there's only so much people can handle in their life.
Right.
I'm accustomed to a level and depth of being able to handle certain emotional depth of things. It's part of what we do. It's part of what I do with people. And I've had to learn to navigate that, but that's not where everyone lives. And when you invite them in, it's like the deep sea waters are amazing and beautiful, but they're frightening because it's darker.
Right.
It's like let's go back to the beach where it's blue and the sun's there, right? It's like, whoa, this is fascinating, but this is too much. And because there it deals with pain, it deals with heartache. It deals with stuff that we haven't learned how to look at them in a healthy way. And so for a while, you and I were like, "What's wrong with us?" Like we have these great moments, and then people disappear. And it was like we had to give room for realizing people only have so much of an emotional capacity in where they're at. Then you add on to it, what family did they come from and how they dealt with emotions. And then, like you said, with your friend, which I'd like to get back to, what cultural differences
it's a big deal.
There are. Because you were talking about the British, and I think what you're referring to is like the royal family.
Yes, I was.
Because there's a big emphasis in the royal family of presentation, how things look, which we as Americans could say, yeah, it's all about royalty and how things look. We're the same way in politics. We're the same way in our culture of the emphasis of how things look. So then when you hear someone share vulnerably, it does create a lot of reactions.
Right. It struck me. I guess you know cultural differences, right? And certain cultures may not deal with things the same and whatever. But what struck me in watching that whole royal situation, which I play out, was the anger. You do not discuss anything that goes on in the family. And this righteous, then you don't, the other parties, you don't respond, because then that makes you even look bad to have an emotion back.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, coming from a family where we had a lot of high drama. Now, we didn't talk about things the best way. It erupted.
You're talking about your upbringing.
My upbringing. Yeah. I look at that and I go, what? You need to respond. Like, I could swing. I have to be careful because I could go the other direction.
Right. That's a good example you're bringing out. Talking about Harry and Meghan.
Yes.
Right.
I'm trying to. My little entertainment thing that I like.
Right. Well, it is fascinating. Everyone gets fascinated with watching them and watching the family. I think it's a good example that you're bringing up because now I don't know a lot about the intricacies. You know more than I do, but I think that it's a good example because it's a very intense example of culture of presentation. Everything's about the presentation. Well, what happens when someone's struggling? So to me, when I see someone publicly come out, right? What it does is it hits people on two sides. One side's like, tell me more, yeah, and kind of, knock the royal family. Then you have people that are like, this is terrible. This is, you're speaking against your family, right?
Right, and using terminology of, now listen, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't know these people. We're not taking sides of who was right, who was wrong. My issue with watching it is trying to understand these differences of how we talk about things, but also tagging on to what you're just saying, another extreme is they're crazy. We don't make room to look at like a Harry and Meghan and go,
what's really going on?
These are deeply broken people, and you don't manifest that kind of stuff without there being deep brokenness. And I get concerned it even media culturally how we're just labeling people.
Yeah, true.
Without any heart. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Compassion, because, well, that doesn't fit for good news, because news is like good attacks, get clickbait and all that stuff.
Right.
But when somebody's manifesting, expressing like that at that level, what it reveals, when he's got a book out now, right?
Yes.
When that kind of expression, it shows me he doesn't have, in his life, he hasn't had any healthy equipping on how to navigate through.
Right.
And so even people that go online and they rant for an hour about their emotional stuff. And for me, I cringe a bit because I go, it's not safe to express in this way to strangers, right? Because you're getting vulnerable, and then people are going to hit back with their opinions, and now strangers are commenting about the deep, intimate, right? So I struggle with that in social media in general.
Because there's so much context we don't know.
Right. And I that's one of the reasons it's been challenged. One of them that's been challenging for me to be on social media platforms, because of the unproductive sharing that's constantly going on.
Right.
And it hits my emotions, and it hits my protective mechanism to go, this is revealing that you're feeling so unsafe.
Yeah.
And this stuff's bubbling to the surface. To share with strangers shows how much support is not there.
Right. And the need that they need to be heard and understood, and
Can I take it off of the British for a second?
Yeah, please.
Because I'm reading a book. I always say the name wrong, but it has to do with the struggles in the community here in the States in the Appalachia region. It's hillbilly
elegy.
Thank you,
Yeah.
hillbilly elegy, and it was turned into a movie. And going through the book, and it's just fascinating the brokenness in the culture and the struggles that they've had, right? But it was very interesting.
It's a very forgotten part of the country.
Very, very, and so they deep poverty, deep problems, struggles, violence, intense
Incest,
violence, right?
Yeah.
All these things, right? But there's this thread he keeps sharing that within it, you don't share the problems with people from the outside. There's this ingrained loyalty in the culture. So he talks about, and in the movie, it's in the movie, now I'm going through the book, and he talks about Meemaw, and Meemaw is the...
Right. That's Grandma. That's Grandma in the South.
Yeah. Played by, people's names better.
Yes. Oh, I forget her name.
Yeah, anyway.
Yes. Glenn Close, is it Glenn
Yes.
Close?
Well done. Well done.
Mm-hmm.
So he talks about how, alcoholic father, his grandfather, alcoholic. There's infidelity. There's fighting. When I say fighting, I don't mean like arguing. I mean drag out fighting.
Right.
I mean people getting bloodied. I mean stabbings.
Right.
So stuff that's like
But we
unbelievable.
go, okay, my childhood wasn't that bad.
Right.
I hear these stories. I feel that sometimes.
So then, in the midst of this, he'd tell a friend, and Meemaw would overhear him saying it.
Yeah, you don't do that.
She wouldn't do anything then, but when she had him alone, it's the first thing she'd bring up. Hey, you don't tell stuff. So whether it's in an elite royal level, or in absolute poverty, there's this mentality of don't make our family look bad. Now, whether it's royalty or whether it's poverty or anything in between, I understand, right? We're putting our baggage out in front of everybody.
Correct.
But then that influence causes a level of hiding where I don't deal with stuff until people see it.
Right.
Right? And or I'm more trying to fix what is seen. And we're running like family PR campaigns where we're like, we're like trying to work on what's seen versus what's really there.
Right.
And I think what you and I are trying to bring out is we're looking at like, yeah, there are times where we talk about mental health too much.
Yeah, where we feel exhausted. You and I have, you know, because you can see it on my face sometimes, because of the heavy load that you will carry where you're doing, like where we were doing counseling together and coaching together in Connecticut. I'm not involved in a lot of those things now because I'm like really focused with the kids. So you bear a lot of that burden and you need to unload, you know, at the end of the day and come and talk to me. And sometimes I know you can see it on my face. I'm like,
Right.
oh my gosh. Like
Where
it's
you're
a lot.
where you're, you know, tapped out from the kids. And then sometimes I come in and you get that look on my face because I'm like,
Right, where I'm trying to tell him about the kids, and he's like, really? What I just had to hear on somebody's phone call?
right.
Right.
So I think that we have a you tell me if you think differently, but I feel we have a conviction that people do not talk about. It's not like mental health, like this category. It's more people don't talk about emotions enough, and we have been struck by how many Christian marriages don't talk.
Let me tell you something. Cannot believe how bad it is. I would sit with people. We've had friends that we've gotten together with.
I wish I could unsee it.
Yes, we wish that we didn't see the things that we've seen in looking at basic conversations.
Right.
Basic.
Because it's like, I'll start with one person, have a conversation, and I have an assumption
That they talk like-
that like his wife knows about this.
Right.
And it's not even, I'm not even talking about like secret hidden things, just everyday struggles. And then I'm like,
Right.
wait, so you and your wife haven't talked? So it's like, okay, all right. Okay, so step one, we got to start getting in touch with your emotions, and you got to start learning how to have conversations. You're wanting to solve this problem over here,
Right.
and you don't even talk.
And we're like, oh, no, this is something that happened 30 years ago that you still haven't resolved. Like, and you're not talking about it? What?
Right.
I have a hard time with that. I do.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll be honest, I do lose compassion sometimes when I see it over and over and how people are not like fighting through the awkwardness of talking.
Right.
Because it goes into other things. And obviously we're coming from a place of Christian faith and Bible-believing family and wanting to raise our family that way. So we are founded in that. A big part of that is prayer. And we've talked about this in previous podcasts on what the awkwardness, especially from me, someone not raised in the church, with praying out loud. And we have fought through that. And we advocate that for married couples because most married couples don't even pray out loud together.
Right.
For each other.
Right.
So if you can't be comfortable talking, never mind, prayer is intimate too of,
Right.
What are we fighting through in our family right now to discuss problems, give them to the Lord in prayer? Like,
Right.
How do you get to that point if you're not talking face to face?
You tell the husband, okay, pray for your wife. He goes,
I cannot tell you the amount of women that tell me,
wait, can you hear me?
yeah. I'm like, does your husband pray for you? Yes. No, like, and I'll ask, does he pray out loud for you? No, I know. He prays in his quiet time. I'm like,
right. So then,
and I don't want to, go ahead.
So what we're just saying here, so this goes back to what we're talking about. So what we're just saying here is going to enrage some wives.
Yeah, I'm
because they
sorry.
go, that's me, he doesn't pray.
I know.
And it's like, now we've...
Because we are over there tapping on the, right.
Now
but I want to stir this, see, this is what Mark and I are called to, and it is what it is. We're called to kind of stir these things up and get people talking about things. And I want to, because I want to challenge people to get healthier. Because at the end of the day, the reason that people get protective, you don't share that about the family, and it comes in a dictator kind of way, is because at home, there is no conversation or emotional language and those things. So we have to protect this at all costs. Because if you had a healthy dialogue at home about working through problems and sharing and say to your children or, listen, we don't share. We deal with stuff in our home, but we have healthy dialogue in our home. It doesn't become an issue of shame and protecting hidden things. It's more honoring what the family's going through. There's a switch there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's...
Do you know what I'm saying?
Correct. Yeah, because I think the call is not dipping into the extremes, but more like we as a family need to do the work here.
Right.
It was interesting. While you were talking, I was thinking of, we mentioned the royal family, we mentioned the Appalachia. There's a lot of times when I read the news about like ministries or people. So there was this example where the police were called Creflo Dollar.
Yeah. I remember that.
I don't follow Creflo Dollar. I've heard stuff. I know enough about what he teaches and stuff like that. But anyways, I just saw the article. It was like where his kid was out, and something happened where I don't know if the kid was out late or out partying or something like that. And then he got mad, right? And there's something where he like got mad, and I feel this emotion of, first of all, I shouldn't really know this.
Correct.
This really isn't my business.
Right.
Because I'm not involved. I'm not a part of the problem or the solution.
Correct.
That's kind of a good gauge of health when it comes to like how we navigate, stuff. But two, I was like, what parent doesn't get furious over their kid's behavior? Right. I'm not condoning violence. I'm not condoning, but I'm like, there's times where kids like act crazy and like, what is right?
Right, and you do and say things sometimes as parents that you go, oh, I was so mad. And we're working out our issues from growing up too as we're parenting. And you do sometimes not do the right thing or say the right thing.
Right.
And I do feel bad for people that then plays out in the public.
Right. I want to speak to people who they do a lot of sharing online. And they do a lot of, they're trying to process.
Well, we see this too, especially because, and I don't mean to interrupt you, with the OCD community too.
Right.
Yeah, so anyways, go ahead.
Which you and I can both relate to, because we can find ourselves talking too much about something, and you have to be self-aware to go, I need to bring it in, because over-talking doesn't help. Now it becomes compulsive. But then it's like we don't want to live lives where we're locking things up.
Right.
I first want to say that I understand when I see someone, whether it's in my comment feed or in a live or I see it somewhere else, they're constantly expressing how bad their day is going and how much of a struggle. It's kind of like another tough day. Hashtag struggling, or I don't know, hashtag vulnerability, or whatever. I'm being funny, but yet at the same time, I understand that feeling. So it reveals to me they're desperate to try to reach out to find connection, right? But if I'm in that situation, I have to remind myself that telling strangers or Facebook friends, because that's not necessarily a real friend, right?
Correct.
A social media friend, right? They don't know you in that kind of way. They may, but that this is not the safest place for me to get the help I need. It's a signal in my real world around me, because I think that social media can create dissonance in our emotions, because we attribute things in social media as the real world when there's a lot of orchestrated, prepped, presentation things, and it messes with our mental health of our view of where we think we should be. That to like be mindful of, okay, I'm trying to like grab from help. This is revealing I really need help.
Right.
And I'm crying out. So it reveals two things. One, I need to take this feeling that can go into desperation and let it motivate me to take action, to find therapeutic, pastoral, relational support in real life.
Right.
Two, and this is the one that I had to learn, is that this is showing me I need to have a better relationship with myself because I'm inflamed right now and I'm crying out for people and I'm going to be needy right now. And in neediness, that's not going to help where I'm going. Because then when they don't meet my need, I'm going to get mad at them. They don't answer me in the way I need. If they do answer me in the way I need, it creates a dysfunctional hook. And now, because I see the pattern, because when you're like in a despair, and you reach out in that kind of extreme way, it gets attention, and people go, "Oh," and they'll interact with it,
well,
right?
I see that's a lot of the time in the chat when you doing your lives. Yeah.
And what it creates is a dysfunctional cycle of now that gets fed. So so I don't get attention in normal life. I don't get validation in normal life. But if I cry out, "I'm hurting," I get attention. Now, I'm saying this because that's me.
We've all done it.
But that was before social media. I did that in IRL.
In real life. In real life.
So it was something that I was like, that's unloving to myself to do that. To come out of that place of neediness, it's rejection driven. I need to let this stirring in me motivate me to go, okay, I need help so I can learn. And 2, I got to be able to start looking at myself in the mirror and going, okay, Mark, I need to find loving ways and how I relate to myself. That's why I talk so much about reuniting yourself in a healthy way, letting God do that. So I feel that for people in the chat. I feel that for Harry, what's his name?
I don't know. Is it Windsor? I don't know.
Prince Harry.
Prince Harry. Just call him Prince Harry.
What?
They're Windsors, right? Is that what they are? I don't know. Prince Harry Prince.
I was like, Harry.
Harry the Prince.
My bad.
Goodness.
That's showing 2 things because a kid growing up whose mother dies, who's one of the most
It's bad stuff. Yeah.
One of the most famous women in the world. I remember when Princess Diana died. I remember where I was. Do you remember where you were?
Isn't that crazy? Yes.
Okay.
There's a few moments in life where
And the only reason it is, not because it was in the news, but because the next morning we had church, and we were in our pastoral meeting.
I know the story that's coming. Go ahead.
We were in our pastoral meeting, as churches do. You have your little, kind of
your powwow beforehand.
Your powwow before, right? Some people use it to pray. Some people use it to kind of run through the order, whatever. And we were kind of walking our way through the hallways, going to the backstage, and somebody had said, I don't know if it was the pastor or one pastor said, we should probably mention Princess Diana and just acknowledge, her death. And another pastor was like, why?
Right.
That was the American of like, that's not our world, like kind of approach. And me, I was real young at the time. I was new on staff, so I must have been. I'm sure I could track back.
You were probably 17 or 18 at the time.
Well, I was on staff, so it would have been 18 plus.
Yeah.
So maybe 19, 20.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there too, kind of like, yeah, why are we mentioning that? That doesn't affect our world. That kind of shows my selfish, my own little world, not realizing leaders have attachment to people.
That's very true, right.
Like we are attached to people we see on TV, even on YouTube. You get connected to somebody.
Yeah.
Point being is that if I'm a kid that little and my mom is that famous and I live in a family that doesn't really share emotions, she's tormented, so she's not being able to nurture them the best way.
Y'all watch The Crown, because let me tell you.
Right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
She's disconnected, so she's not,
Right.
She's not engaged in that way. And then, it seems like the father thing ain't that great either. Mm-hmm. And now grow up and act right. So you see him making decisions, who he marries, and what's navigating, right? I just look and I go, he needs a compass, and that compass isn't. It's not going to be found processing out to the public,
right? Which people who are not famous and don't have famous parents, I see them on Instagram, and I've seen things that get shared. Where people have this thing now where they'll set up a camera their phones and they film themselves crying. Have you seen that?
No, but
Yeah.
Like
Like they're having a hard day, like a mom's having a hard day. And she'll because all this is staged, everybody. Like they'll have the kids stuff all around them and it's like, oh, I'm having a hard day as a mom. And she just like has the phone there and it's watching her cry. And people are like, oh my gosh.
right.
And I'm like, let's think this out. They set the camera up
Wow, yeah.
to watch themselves cry so that you can watch them cry and give them sympathy.
Yep.
Right? So we see this even in like the lives, chats. People are like, I'm struggling, which I'm not talking to. It's then people then jump in to give advice and it just keeps going and going and going. And there's hooks to keep people in to give these people attention.
In some ways, are some people looking at that and maybe it gives them a reference of like, oh, okay, it's okay for me to sit and cry.
No, if
Maybe.
somebody's getting that from that.
Maybe.
Do you really think so? That could.
Looking at a mom who's going, I'm having a hard time, and it shows her sitting there and cry. It could give somebody.
Okay, maybe people that just never saw that. Okay.
Well, we have to realize too, like how ill-equipped we are to know that it's okay to
grieve,
to have an emotion, and sometimes seeing a picture
so
of it.
This is our question: is it too much? I don't know. Like to me, that's over the top. That's too much.
Yeah, well, I agree. That's over the top for her to do that, but I'm trying to see redemption. I'm trying to see redemption
We're trying
in
to see
it.
if there's a balance in
That
this.
like, could somebody look at that and go,
it's okay to be a mom that's struggling.
Because maybe it could be a mom she goes throughout the day, she never has a moment to just let the emotions flow, right? Like be on. And it's like, what is that? You cry in front of your kids? Do you not, right? Because a lot of us are navigating marriage and parenting with zero healthy references.
Right.
I've had a constant feeling in my journey. Ironically, I help so many people, but my journey is like based on, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm willing to learn.
Right.
And so I keep practicing. And like even our kids are teenagers now, and it's like, okay, God.
Help us.
I don't know what I'm doing, but you're here to help me.
Right.
And I think that's the heart that we need to have. And I don't know, maybe there are people are getting that kind of thing out of it. But what you're speaking to is the stage sharing, that then people equate this with real life.
Right.
And then what I would call, maybe this is a word I could use, are we falling into patterns of unredemptive sharing, right?
I would say that's the bigger thing.
Right? Because a lot of times people just rant. And ranting is the way that you get attention in politics, and the way you get attention in like certain like world, social, or community. You want to get something, you rant about it.
Yeah.
Right? But for healthy emotional stuff, that's not the way to do it. You're venting, but you're not working through things. And I think sometimes people are struggling so much. I hear a lot of the rants and I go, they probably should have sat in a room with somebody and done that with a good friend and then landed and go, okay, here's what I need to do, versus spewing it out. I think that's like when the Bible talks about be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to wrath, because the rants are usually the wrath. Right? And God is like, the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God, right? So it's what it's saying is like, in that rage, kind of like, I'm sick of it, right? And sometimes we need those angry moments to like push something, but we live in a culture where it's like outrage and rant becomes our currency.
Right. All right, so let me ask you this question, because we've talked about this in the past. I want to flip it to the church a little bit. So we have had times where we follow certain preachers or whatever, and they will give a sermon and talk about, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, I was to the point where I wanted to die. I was going through blah, blah, blah. And they kept the show going. And you and I have said in times past, wow, it would have been good to like understand I don't know how do you feel about that? Like what we see, people who are discipling other people.
Yeah, it shows.
I don't know what the balance is in that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't have perfect answers, but I think like you in our early stages, we were first married. We sat in a meeting, and a pastor had gotten up and talked about time off that he had, and he said something to the effect of, "I didn't even know if I wanted to be saved anymore."
Right.
Right. He wasn't a vulnerable sharing person about his life. Right. But he's like, on my break, I was tired. And I didn't even know if I wanted to be saved anymore.
Right.
And he just floated that out there,
right.
and then just moved on with the meeting. So every it felt like everyone was like, "Huh? Oh, okay." So moving on. And you and I are like,
wait, whoa,
with
stop.
our
we need to ask what's happening with him. He
Say that again.
We need to ask what's happening.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's like this, like we're ratcheted up and like, whoa, what's going on? And it's like moves on, and then it's like, is there something wrong with me? Did I just hear, or you hear, someone's
and not out of judgment that he said those specific words. We look deeper in it of going, whoa, he's in pain.
Right.
Hold on.
Right.
Stop, time out.
But the show must go on.
Right.
That's what it revealed. I had a pastor I was talking to in between services, and he had an emotional breakdown in front of me, like right in front of me, like colossal, like I can't take it anymore. Once the tears were happening, and then we were trying to exchange a little bit, I watched it right in front of my eyes, like cleared up the tears, and like, all right,
back to work. Right.
And there was a part of me that was like, clean up on aisle 5.
Oh, that's where you need your button.
I need my button. Clean up on aisle 5. So then I'm standing there like,
wait a second. Hold up. Wait
what just
a
happened?
minute.
So I think I've sat in services where I watch a preacher over time where I'm like, he's processing his therapy on stage.
Yes, we've seen that.
So
I would say 90% of the public does not pick up on that. But
So So I go, okay, I've done that a lot.
Yeah.
2, who's helping him? Who's supporting him?
Right. Especially these big
That's
guys.
not just
Guys that are,
people that are like really got his back. And I don't think that's really there. And so Christians tend to go to, they're getting a divorce. He's an alcoholic. He's a drug addict. We don't look to what's at the root system. We stare at the branch because the branch is what you see, and we're more bothered by what looks bad than what's really going on.
Correct.
We're more bothered that the pastor fell and now the church is falling and people and we're like, wait a second. We don't take a look and going, what are we cultivating as a culture? You can't be healthy preaching every single week, multiple times a week, being a CEO, being this, and this. You're not going to have a healthy family.
No.
You choose one or the other a lot of times, right? And when you choose the big organization that you chase, then your marriage is going to take a hit.
Yeah.
Your kids are going to take a hit. It's just inevitable because of what it requires to pour into that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think that
I don't think there's a perfect answer for it. Right.
And sometimes part of my brain is like trying to find
it.
the idea, because I do try to look for like the balance ideal, and I can do that a lot. But then I also make room for like, no, this is a journey of discovery, because I'm in this tricky place where I respectfully appreciate what the institutional church is trying to do, but I've seen so much of the brokenness and the problems. I see many people looking for more authentic ways to have community and work on their what people would categorize as mental health. But I would say it's more just emotional life and just relational. To me, mental health is really about relational health.
Correct.
Right? It's because all our ways of thinking go back to our relationship history. So
and we're all searching for that. We were just talking out with our daughter, who's on the verge of being 13, and what healthy friendships look like for her. And our wise little Abby said, she's watched like these Disney shows. And so we were sharing this morning and she said,
right.
you know what, Mom? I think watching some of those shows damaged me. And I said, very astute, right, for her age.
Right.
I said, why do you say that? And she said, well, all these shows show these two girls that they meet when they're like in elementary school, 6, whatever, and then they stay friends through high school. They're going to college and they stay besties. She's like, is that really out there? Is that a real thing? And I'm like, well, I don't. And I see it in her eyes at 12 years old, her wanting to connect in that way with a friend,
right.
and find friends,
right? But it can
that
create,
are meaningful in that way.
But we can even see at her age where it can create a unhealthy expectation.
Yes, and she saw
Right.
it of what she's expecting from people.
Right, right.
So we all have that, right? At the end of the day, that we want that utopian thing too of even what it looks like to share. What real church looks like. What does the real church look like to break bread with other families and us all discuss and have the men lead and they're leading the home and we're all working together as one and sharing what our families are growing in and going through. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Right.
But that's messy.
Right.
And it's what we're wanting to attain, I guess, right? And have balance and all that.
And I would say in the issue of, do you share mental, emotional, relationship health too much or too little? I find culturally, not just social media, but culturally in interactions, I find the meter is over towards not enough.
Yes.
Okay, I still think we're way in not enough. Now,
yes.
That is not, I'm not in that metric using social media sharing. So like if I share something online, I don't count that as sharing for my health.
That is such an excellent point.
Oh, thanks. That's not.
No,
so,
it is.
So I think about even.
Yes.
So when I talk about redemptive sharing, I think it's like even when we did the episodes where we shared some of our struggles. When we were going, okay, because we prep a bit.
Yeah.
Today we just had a couple thoughts and said, let's see what happens.
Right. This is our new format.
But it was like going. I had a bunch of thoughts collide at the same time.
I'll grab it back.
What was I saying?
Now my brain just went sideways.
I went into.
No, I said.
I went into our show prep about something.
Babe, that's such a good point about we don't share enough, and you're
redemptive
and
sharing.
We talk about
redemptive
where
sharing,
we've shared online and where we prep of what do we share, what don't we. Because we have a lot of stories that we're like.
Got it.
Ooh!
I got it.
You caught it.
The thought came back.
Awesome.
We said, okay, when we share these areas of our struggle, we do want to include, but where are we headed?
True.
And that is redemptive sharing.
Right.
Here's what's going on, but here's what I'm trying to discover, here's what I'm trying to learn. And it takes the vulnerability of what we're going through and it invites other people to go with us.
Right.
And so that's important. But and I may change my mind. Maybe someday you'll see me turn on the camera and just ranting.
Well, because Mark's got some good stories that I do think he does need to share that I think would be cathartic for you.
You're right. Yeah, there's stuff I've shared about being transparent that was actually a part of my next level because it's part of what I do, and there's people that can benefit from that. I'm not saying people need to share online in order to, but for me, because I can have a battleground of perfectionism over what I'm saying or presentation or what people
and honor. We've taken that word too in a lot of supernatural circles on honor, and it's gotten to me very highly twisted.
Yeah, it gets twisted. Yeah,
that
for
could
sure.
be a whole podcast in and of itself. But
especially
there is a good way of coming out of pastoring. We've had to lock down and honor people's stories, and I've shared this in the past. Which then does become one of the toughest things of pastoring is everybody's story, and let's say this one gets offended with this one, and I'm like, if you only knew what was going on in their life, you would totally give them all kinds of grace, but I can't tell you. Like, there's things that would help people to just talk
Right.
that we've had to like really lock down.
Right. Out of
just honoring people's lives and where they're at.
Correct. And then
we get blamed for oh wait, that's my pain. Forget it. I won't go there.
Right. No, so true. So I think but I don't feel like there's a formula for even me and how I'm doing it. I think I lean more towards I'm having to step by step share things that, like, yeah, when I put together a video, I typically have some kind of inner critic voice come up in some form or fashion, how something looks, or maybe I mess up, and I will intentionally leave some mess ups in for my own healing.
Yeah, you do.
Because, and we have discussions about this, there's things where if like, the light was off. Okay, let me turn it on, and I can redo the like obvious things. But for me, that old monster will want to creep in,
Right.
and so for the sake of my healing, some of those where the presentation isn't perfect, or where I share a part of my journey, and people are like, "Wow," because I've seen a lot.
Right.
You know, I've seen a lot of dysfunction. I've seen a lot of pain. I've had ministry trauma. I've seen cults. I've seen cult-like. I've seen stuff that could be documentaries.
Yes,
you know,
we have. Yes.
Really good documentaries that would do well.
Really well. Right.
Stuff that's still in. You know, you
Stuff
could
that's been
research.
in the news.
You could research headlines and see it
Yeah.
on the news, and I've known the people. So the point being is that I'm navigating, like, even how I share my journey, because people benefit from hearing from what I've processed through, right?
Yeah.
But I never want to be in a place where I'm just turning on the phone
Or gossiping.
and I'm just pure mad
Right. Never.
and just going off about something. That's a big currency that is out there.
Yeah.
I don't judge people for doing that, but it's not mentally healthy for you.
No.
Because that's meant to be done in the safety of relationships. And people spin, well, I don't have that. I don't have what you and Melissa have. Right?
Right.
What?
I said we're back to that square one of right.
Well, because I know where the spinnies go. You know, I don't have that. I don't have, and there are times where where I didn't have you before we met. Right? There were times I've had close friendships, great relationships for seemed like tight, times where it's not, where it's more lonely, right? I've known that in those times when I don't have the friendships around, I can learn how to be kinder to myself.
True.
Okay? No one's around, right? Because when you're constantly spinning and spewing out about how bad your day's going, you're being unloving to yourself, right? And you're inflaming, you're magnifying that road in your brain to keep going back to how bad it is. Right? It's a very being in that ditch is very, very difficult. But I found when I was hitting rock bottom, I realized, well, rock bottom isn't as bad as I thought. And I was like, all right, Mark, how are we going to relate now? Like I'm almost talking to another person. It was just my way of processing that. But I think it signaled to me at those stages, if I'd find myself in a staff meeting. There's another illustration. There was a couple times in staff meeting at the old church I worked at where I just kind of irritatingly went off, Not like I wasn't yelling at anybody. I remember one time where I was like, we don't even know each other. We're trying to have these like get-togethers, and I don't know what's going on with you. I don't know what's going on with you. We don't even know each other. We're just doing business together, right? Okay, I'm venting.
But there's truth to it that need to be...
Truth to it? What's that revealing, though? Mark, you got some pain.
Yeah.
You got to work through.
Exactly.
What we typically do is we go off, and then we go, well, I got that off my chest, and we go on with life. Or we feel bad. Oh, I got angry. I shouldn't have done that. That was terrible. And I had a mixture of both. But it was like, really the signal is, Mark, you're crying out for community. So whether it's Harry, whatever his last name is. This is terrible. We're terrible
the
Americans.
Prince. Right.
In the comment section, they're going to be like,
Look at me, look at this.
Harry of Windsor.
Right. Right.
Stop being so wibble wobbly.
He just wanted to do the accent.
And whether it's coming from the Appalachia, or whether it's coming from urban community, or coming from poverty, or coming from wealth that still didn't talk about things, and they covered over everything with busyness and trips and vacations, and he's going to Harvard, and she's got a business going.
Helps if you're rich and you're just all vacationing in Aruba.
Probably.
Does it?
Probably.
I'm joking. Okay, so
it is fun to consider that, though.
It is. Okay, so what's a couple things that we could just encourage people in what's it like to find, dare I say, balance?
I think it's a good self-awareness. Do I share about my emotions, my mental health too much?
Right.
If so, what is my sharing saying about what I really need?
Excellent.
Or which most, if I was to take a rock and drop it from a plane in the middle of somewhere, most likely in that area they share too little.
Yeah.
Right? That's a lot. That's just what seems to be the case. How can I begin making room for emotional sharing? Couples, because many wives go, I drown. I did the shame attack thing, right? Where there's the drowner and there's the denier, right?
Right.
And a wife will say, well, I'm the drowner and he's the denier. That's a tough spot.
Correct.
Right? Because you're drowning and there's a person on shore looking the other way.
Right. Watching a game.
Right. And you're like, hell, and they're like looking the other way. Or they look at you and go,
what? Do you need something?
That's a tough thing. Okay. That requires having some honest conversations of like, we need to make some changes because I need to ground myself, but you need to get in the water, bro. You know? Or
no
maybe
one can force anybody to do that.
And I think it just starts with going, I need a structure in my life. So if I was to take somebody like, can I just use your Harry guy for an example?
He seems to be the target today, so how to...
No, it is
the example.
It's a good example.
It was a springboard.
I would look at him and go, I would recommend regular, ongoing, there's stuff regarding his mom that he's never processed and talked through, I'm sure. Emotional connectivity kind of training, counseling. But I would recommend that for a lot of people in general. And some of that isn't like, I got to find the right practitioner. We live in a culture where you can start with just YouTubing it. Just how to identify emotions.
There are plenty of, exactly. That was going to be my, go ahead.
Because we get overwhelmed with like, well, I went to this counselor, went to that. And it's like, keep trying, keep finding, what works, because you're going to bump into what doesn't work. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's so much learning available in books and things to get yourself acquainted with that, so that then you realize, oh, okay, that affected me, but not in just a constant unproductive. It's like, okay, I'm going to start to reparent those areas.
Right.
Because all emotions, problems that we have lead us back to like, we got to learn how to reparent ourselves.
Right. And we have to understand emotional language. And that was the one thing that I was going to just say is that there's so much resources because there's people that want to talk, they just don't know how. Mm-hmm. So Google things, just even how you're feeling. How do I talk about this?
Right.
I mean, there's tons and tons, thousands at this stage, hundreds of thousands of videos that people are putting out about emotional immaturity, understanding, giving yourself the language so then you're a good person too to go back and forth with.
I think that if you can find in any format a group of people that meet regularly that you can get with, like in church settings, that'd be a small group. I found that churches tend to not obsess, but we focus in on like the curriculum. And I found myself doing that too. I want to get a group of guys together and I do a curriculum. I remember when I did a men's group and I had this whole curriculum and I was creating a plan and this, which is fine, that's how I think. Mm-hmm. We got together, I used none of it.
Right.
because the first thing, which was a icebreaker that I used, which was just like a sharing thing, that ended up being the whole meeting.
Right.
And it was like, a lot of times what we need is we need just a place to feel okay to just share and just go, here's what I'm going through, and be understood and not be judged or you know, if you can find that. Now, it doesn't have to be a church setting one. It could be a group of guys that get together at the job that you work at and you on your lunch break once a week. It could be, you know, you have a hobby that you have in common with people.
Right.
You know, people that a knitting club or a cheese making club or
I'll join that. We would do that. Cheese, making cheese.
or a kombucha fermenting class or cooking class or
Right.
like the you know, or whatever, woodworking. That'd be something I'd like to do.
You would like to do that.
Yeah, where in
Maybe
that
you can find in woodworking the grandpa you've never had.
right.
You and I do have a thing about that.
Right. I'm going to start crying now. Thanks a lot.
I know, sorry.
Well, I have when I watch YouTube Dad, which
There's not just one specific one. Right.
there's a couple carpentry guys, and I'll sit there and I'll just watch, and I'm just like, you feel that like fatherly, grandfatherly kind of like.
Yeah, I have it in the grocery store. I have like a grocery store thing where I see like an old man in the grocery store, and I like to smile at him and see if he's going to talk to me. And they usually do, like, hey, how are you? I'm like, do you want to be my grandpa? Is that too soon? Am I going in too quick at our relationship?
Right, right, right. Can I sign you up right now?
Right.
What's
do you have
a-
grandchildren?
what's
Can
a-
I be part of them?
Yeah. What's a non-awkward way I can ask this person to be my grandparent?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you and I have a thing
We
for
go
that.
through that a lot.
Right.
Well, I never had a relationship with any of my grandparents. My grandfathers died before I was ever alive, and
That's true.
both my grandmothers, one only spoke Spanish, so I just go, I wouldn't know what
Right,
she's
that's
saying,
true.
and the other I didn't see
Live
much,
too far away, right.
and she didn't talk much to me either. Anyway, so there's that longing of we want to have, and some people out there, the stirring is like, I need to start it.
That's true.
You're looking for it, but why don't you host it? And it's not like you have to be a teacher. Sometimes we think of like, if I have a group, then that means I got to teach it. No, it may mean just hosting it. Maybe if you're good at putting some snacks together,
Right.
That's it
When
right
you
there.
say that, though, I know how people who can start those kinds of things, I instantly go to, I'm going to have to kick somebody out at some point. The group's going to go sideways at some point,
Right.
and I don't
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with it.
I was a part.
I know that's a doom and gloom thing, but like
Yeah, I was a part of.
I do dread that.
I was a part of a group where I had to tell the leader I can't come anymore. That guy's so
Toxic.
He's so unsafe.
And if no one's going to do anything about it, because like,
Right.
then we're running our groups like we run our family. We're allowing the narcissist, obnoxious victim to run everything and bully the whole family or the group.
We're about to get into a whole.
You know what? This podcast is going to go in a whole other direction. So,
thanks.
okay, I think that we've
This was nice.
it was.
I like this.
hope people liked our new.
Well, I like talking to you, so I think that
Well,
this kind of gave us. I felt like having the mics away and us like being scrunched in front of the camera at my station over there.
yeah, and I
little bit.
needed to be comfy, quite frankly. Like you have your setup there, and I come
Right.
in and I move in, and then by the end of us filming, my neck hurts.
Does your neck hurt today?
So I'm going to complain online right now. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, and tell us if you like this tree here. We liked it. It is a little bright.
I'm struggling with it. We feel like this maybe need to be
Should I paint it black?
painted black.
The-
The tree.
The silver part.
We like the tree because we're all about the tree and the
Trees
roots
of
and the
righteousness,
branches.
root system, heart.
Yeah.
Love all that.
So
Well planned.
please let us know in the comment section.
Thank you so much. And
Yeah,
if this is
thank you, everybody.
if this is a blessing to your life and journey, please like, subscribe, and share. Go to markdejesus.com and you can find more resources and materials to help your healing and freedom journey. You can donate and support to this work. Obviously, this format here is designed around us having conversations that you can find yourself in that could maybe spark conversations. So in this episode and any episode that Melissa and I do together, if we can spark a good conversation or support and direction in your life, we're honored mission accomplished. That's what we want to do.
Yeah.
We're not solving everybody's problems, but we're walking our journey. Encourage you to take the same with us. So we look forward to doing this again. Feel free to send us your questions that you may have, or maybe a topic that you'd like the both of us to discuss, and we'll see if we could dive in. But until next time, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. It's your brother from another mother.
And a sister from another mister.
Saying we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.